Good morning. I had a clear case here of overdriving the blades. I want to show an example of what that looks like and things that could be done to correct it. You can see, I hope, the pattern here where you can almost see each individual blade stripe, and then you can see where it's a little lower, and then at the edge of where that blade would have lived, it feathers up. That's just basically a factor of the volume because of the density of the lawn and overdriving it. You got to slow down in some areas, and that creates that type of lever. We'll call the ones that you got to go back for levers, and so that one is easy to recognize. You can go to a higher lift blade, help pull up and discharge more. You can have your deck, if you are running homeowner, you're just going to have that shallower deck, which carries less volume. And basically the best way to deal with it is to slow down, or you could go to a higher cut height, because if you've got that density and you cut across the top and make it look even, it don't matter if it's 6 inches deep or 4 inches, it's going to look good. And then the higher you go, the more moisture you can hold in there. Now there's other types of levers. One that's common here in Florida is the sparsity, from sparsity of the lawn clippings, or I mean the lawn growth. They're just spread out, and that happens a lot when I take over lawns from homeowners that have mowed it too low for a long time, and the nutrient layer is pretty much decimated because every time it can't hold moisture, so these clippings that fall don't rot down and create more nutrients, because you have to have X amount of moisture for X period of time. And that's not going to happen with rainfall. That has to happen with dew collection, surface area of dew collection, and the more soil moisture that's allowed to happen when you have this canopy. Like if you were in the Amazon, if you cut just a little bit off the tops, you're still going to have the canopy effect. You're still going to have the moisture retention. You're not going to hurt the ecology. Whereas if you cut maybe 10 feet lower and you're taking out 60% of the branches, now you lose that canopy. And that's how they're reclaiming some of the desert in some of these other countries. They're starting with the canopy, then they're going to their soil-borne plants. And the importance of the soil-borne plants is that holds down the soil-based allergens, which are the most abrasive to the human respiratory tract. You don't want to float those soil-borne allergens up into the air if you can help it. And then, of course, the soil moisture is critically important because that's when you get like worms and microorganisms working, that their waste is nutrients for the lawn. So basically, you could lay it all out as it's the most critical thing in lawn care is how well you're able to preserve the ground moisture more than anything. And you never know, just that extra inch on this blade of grass might give the next piece next to it just enough shade to proliferate, to grow, and then you just start building in density. But anyway, so as far as levers, then when you've got a sparse lawn from that, then there's no peer pressure. There's no the plants around it to make it stand for the clipping, and then it can fold over and escape your blades, because there's a lot of turbulence, a lot of air movement underneath of that deck. And when you have a sparse lawn like that, it's very difficult. It's always tempting to just go lower so you can cut closer to the stalk, which obviously would cut it, but it doesn't do anything to bring back the density of the lawn nor the health, and you're always going to have that all those problems. And then another one that I commonly have is when I go back and I look at where a piece of grass got missed, is if it lies in a little divot. And what that does is it's the same as cutting higher off the stalk, and that because it was in a divot, it was further off the stem, it could bend over and get out of the way of the blades. I see that all the time. So There's probably more if anybody wants to comment on the different scenarios where they found that there's consistently levers and, you know, missed blades of grass. Then, you know, of course, there's the common things. For me, I'm underpowered, probably. I'm running 27 horse. So that makes a difference. I do have the commercial type deck with the higher volume. And of course, one way you can somewhat mitigate levers is having sharp blades. For me, and on this property, I'm going to do a 90-degree cross to clean this up. I'm going to weed eat first so that these clippings can dry a little bit, because I'm bringing the dogs over here for a run today in this caged area. So that's just some of the observations that I've had. Another factor on overdriving the blades would be your blade tip speed. And to share information, I did clock my blade tip speed up before on one of the mowers. And what happens though, so in other words, the pulleys on a 72 are X amount of size, and if you have the XR7 deck, they're huge. So, but for me, what I was running at the time was 60-inch. I don't have a 60-inch here. And what I was doing was sourcing pulleys from a 52. And if you think that all of the clutch pulley sizes are the same, which I've actually seen two different versions, but for the most part, you know, replacement clutches for a Hustler are always pretty much going to have the same pulley. I don't know. What happened though was, one, it sucked more power from the engine. Yes, you would have less levers, you know what I mean, per se, because you are going to create more vacuum and everything, but you're going to eat your deck up, because in my area, it's mostly sand here. It's loud. It's very loud. I don't find it to be worth it. I did run it for a while, quite a while, because I really like to know if something was viable before I move on. And what it comes down to is very similar to what I'm experiencing here with the fans. You know, it comes down to volume and of air, this, you know, exchanging X volume of air or velocity. Now, if you're concerned about velocity, I think that there's a better way to do it, and that would be run high lift, medium lift, and then, well, I don't know, but on the one mower I've got, it just by circumstance, I have a higher lift blade in the very center, and the center has more load than everything else because the right side only has the grass that it's dealing with. The center has the grass it's dealing with plus the grass from the right blade, and it doesn't have a real great place to exchange that grass and get rid of it. And then the left side blade, it has its own grass and the clippings from the other two, but it has the benefit of being able to discharge. And that's where I find that the dynamic chute blocker comes in handy, because you can change your airflow that way. You know, if you're on straggly grass, you want to be open as much as you can. And if you're having problems with these chutes like hanging and not going where you want them to, it's almost always, for me, this dirt debris that's built up there. And my decks are compromised and worn paper thin, so I got a few holes right there. Plus, if you're not adjusted correctly, you're going to get this. As soon as you blow that, clean that out, that chute will work perfect. Oh, I wanted to add, what I meant by volume versus velocity too is, this fan's a volume fan. It's huge, spoon shaped, and it has a lesson to teach us I think in mowing. It has fatter, higher pitch, spoon shaped blades. It runs at a relatively low RPM because of the clocking of the motor. Versus the Max Air has a higher, you know, I mean, if you look at the belts, it's almost, you know, it's very much similar size on the drive over driven, whatever you want to put. So the speed on that is going to be a lot higher. The blades are tuned to that speed, but no matter what you do, when you're trying to deal with velocity on air movement, you're going to have the percussive effect of your blade smacking the air. And you're also going to have to deal with issues like convection or cavitation. Okay, so you're going to have harmonics, you're going to have various speeds where things don't work because you don't have that smooth, steady airflow that you need for good mowing performance. So yeah, it does solve some things to increase blade tip speed and to, as a consequence, increase your air grass mix ratio, but there can be consequences to it. And, you know, of course, safety would be one too.